Hello, this is MrChabry, and let me tell you the story of the coolest Pokemon trainer to ever live. Chad started out his story just like any other Pokemon trainer. He was brought in, introduced to the world by Professor Oak, and he met Professor Oak's grandson, Jack. Another name that a lot of people think sounds pretty cool. It's going to be a showdown. Who is the cooler out of these two, Chad or Jack? Chad is going to go with Charmander. He thinks that if he evolves it into Charizard, well, of course, he would have to be the coolest Pokemon trainer ever. Another reason why we went with Charmander is that if we had our rival get Charizard, he doesn't resist ice like you would think. In fact, he's weak to ice. The only Pokemon starter that resists ice in Generation 1 is going to be Blastoise, so it adds a little bit of challenge. Of course, it doesn't matter how much he trains this Charmander. The Charizard is never going to be considered cool. But Chad's going to have to take a little bit of time to make that realization. Let's kind of talk about what happens up to that point. After a long battle of attrition, he defeats Brock. Charmander evolves into Charmeleon on the way to Mount Moon. Chad is beaten by Jack when he comes across him in Cerulean City. However, his second rematch, he is able to defeat Jack. You can see Charmeleon isn't really giving us the power that we really need at this point. And I decide, instead of facing Misty, we're going to do some more training by going down to the SSN. That's because there's no way we can take on Starmie with Charmeleon. Even with Chad training, it takes 2 attempts to finally defeat Jack on the SSN. But the thing that affects Chad the most about this SSN trip is the fact that they wait for him to get off before they leave, and they leave him behind. They deemed him uncool. And it ends up taking about 3 attempts to finally defeat Misty. Charmeleon's really not holding its own, especially against these types that are super effective against it. Here's to hoping that Charizard actually can do a little bit better. And at this point it seems like Charizard can hold its own a little bit more, but it still doesn't have that coolness factor that Chad is looking for. As he walks through Lavender Tower, he finds Jack again, and this time he's going to battle Jack. Charizard actually holds its own. Charizard still does not have that coolness factor. Chad decides that it is time to maybe add another Pokemon to the team. This decision is going to be the most important decision for Chad. While fishing in Celadon City, Chad came across a Poliwhirl. Now, Poliwhirl would be a cool Pokemon to add, but Chad decided that this was not the Pokemon he wanted. Luckily, there was someone else that wanted a Poliwhirl, and that is how Chad received his very first ice type, Jinx. Now with Jinx in hand, Chad is ready to face down Jack once again. This time, he's got his awesome ice type. Lola comes out and misses a lovely kiss, but 2 ice punches will do the trick. Growlithe comes out. I go for Ice Punch because fire does not resist ice in Generation 1. That's a weird quirk. They probably intended to do that. I'm not sure if they did or not. But I don't want Jinx to lose out on any experience, so we're going to go ahead and heal it up after I let Charizard finish off the Growlithe. Execute goes down to an Ice Punch. Next up is Alakazam, and I don't want to risk losing Jinx right now because Jinx is burnt. So we're going to go ahead and get Charizard just to finish off the Alakazam. And then Blastoise comes out, and I'm going to go ahead and Psychic. And we end up not being able to do anything because of our level on Jinx. So we're going to go back into Charizard. We're going to have to get some badges so that way we don't have to worry about that becoming an issue. But now that we have defeated Jack, that gives us access to another Ice-type Pokemon. And that Pokemon is just right across the room. Lapras is now a part of our team. Now it's time to get some of the gym badges that we actually skipped to get to this point. And one of those is Lieutenant Surge. So we're going to go back to Vermilion City, and we're going to take on Lieutenant Surge. I've got Lapras out here body slamming the Voltorb. Voltorb usually doesn't have electric moves, what I've noticed. We're going to switch into Lola here because Pikachu does have electric moves. And we're going to Ice Punch this thing into Oblivion. You can see that with Lola, I'm kind of struggling because it doesn't want to listen. But I don't want Lapras to get smacked around. Even with Lola doing this, it ends up working out in our favor anyway. And even though Erica also uses Poison type, which Lola would cut through that so easily, especially with Psychic and Ice Punch. We have to be very wary because Lola doesn't want to listen. Lapras is weak to Grass. So we're going to try to play around this problem that we've got. We go into Lola, who refuses to even attack and instead goes for Lovely Kiss. And we get hit with a Wrap, which is really annoying. Luckily, we finally get the Ice Punch in. Tangela comes out, and I decide that Lola has brought itself so low on health that I would rather do the switcheroo tactic with Charizard. If we can get the gym badge here, Lola should no longer do these annoying shenanigans that it does. Lapras comes out and goes down to a Petal Dance. I was hoping one Ice Beam would be it, and then Lola comes out to actually finish the battle. Next up is Koga, and I actually come in here without healing. I want Lapras to get some experience because I know Jinx can cut through this guy's team like butter. I go into Jinx, not quite a one-hit KO, but luckily the Minimize does not pay off for Koga, and we knock it out. Lola's going to learn Body Slam, which is way better than Lovely Kiss, so we let that happen. Psychic takes down the Coughing. Coughing does not have the best special defense. And then Wheezing here actually takes a hit and hits us back with a Sludge. Luckily, it wasn't a self-destruct. Upon reaching Cinnabar Island, Chad comes across a Ponyta, a fire horse. Normally, this would be cool, right? Chad decides it's not cool enough for him. He needs something else. So he finds someone willing to trade that Ponyta for a seal. And that's not all on this leg. He also goes to Seafoam Island, catches a Shelter, and he catches the best Ice type in the entire game. That being Articuno. One thing you might have noticed is that Chad went and battled his rival in Silph Co, but he actually left Silph Co. So we gotta go and kind of do some storyline stuff there, defeating Giovanni and Team Rocket. So here we are with the ultimate team. Of course, not every Pokemon is at its final form, but this is the Pokemon that we're going to try to level up. Shelter being the one that I really want to get leveled up. I'm going to do the switcheroo tactic with Shelter, bringing in Lapras to do the knockout hits. And you can see Ice Beam really doing a lot of damage. Body Slam coming in to finish off what Ice Beam does not finish. Shelter ends up learning Clamp, and I think, hey, Clamp, that would be good, but we do have Surf. But it might come in handy in certain situations where we do outspeed. We can lock things in with a Clamp. Unfortunately, we go down to a Poison Sting from Nidoqueen, but Lapras comes in and finishes the battle. It's time. I go ahead and use the Water Stone on Shelter, evolving it into Cloyster. And what's cooler than defeating the gym leader with the strongest type in Generation 1? It's time for us to face down Sabrina. So that's what we're going to do. Do the switcheroo for Cloyster, bringing out Lapras to do the knockout on Kadabra. I do the same thing for the Mr. Mime, so that way Cloyster can get caught up. That's the main thing. Get Cloyster caught up, because it's not going to be doing much otherwise. Body Slam really cutting through a lot of these Psychic types. Psychic types in Generation 1 don't really have the best physical defense, especially Kadabra and that crew. Venomoth comes out, and I'm going to lock this thing into Clamp. I go for Tri-Attack, hoping that maybe I could burn it, paralyze it, or freeze it, but I don't get that, so I'm going to go ahead and switch in the bird of the day, and that is Articuno. We're going to go out to Cloyster. Articuno knocks out Venomoth pretty easily. Lapras, unfortunately, goes down to a Psy-Wave, and then a Fly. Not quite enough. The Ice Beam cleans things up. Now, in the Pokemon Mansion, I come across the TM for Blizzard, and I actually end up giving this to Cloyster after trying to think about it. The reason why I didn't give it to Articuno is because Articuno actually learns Blizzard on level up. We also evolve Sailor to Dugong, and we challenge Blaine. Remember, Chad started this challenge out thinking that Fire type was the cool type to go. But now he's here to prove that Ice type is way cooler than any Fire type. Cloyster comes out and just hits things with Surf. Cloyster now caught up to the point where it can go toe-to-toe with some of these Pokemon. And you can see that really Fire Spin is the most annoying thing that Blaine has. I'm using my Pokemon that also have the water typing, so that's going to help me out in taking some of these hits. But I decide with how things are going, I'm going to have to sack off Cloyster. Now I'm going to go into Articuno, so that way I can hit things really hard. You can see Articuno does have some nice bulk to it. Arcanine comes out, it goes for an Ember. Luckily it didn't go for a Fire Blast there, but here it does go for the Fire Blast. We survive, but Articuno goes down. Next up is Lola. Lola has Bubble Beam. It's had Bubble Beam for a while, and it uses that to finish the battle. But now with Blaine defeated, all that is left is Giovanni. Giovanni has ground types. Ice is good against ground. Not only that, I've got water types on my team too, so we can hit these things pretty well. So a nice Surf knocks out his first 2 Pokemon. I go into Sailor to knock out the Nidoqueen. I still have Aurora Beam on this thing. And Nidoking comes out. It just takes 2 Aurora Beams to finish that thing off. Last up is Rhydon. This thing does not like any water type moves, so a sneeze from a Surf will knock it out. Before we face Victory Road, we have to work our way through the rival. And this time, we're a lot better prepared than we were early on in this challenge. Cloyster knocks out the Pidgeot, destroys the Rhyhorn. But next comes Growlithe, and Growlithe might do a little bit more damage to Cloyster, so I'll go into Lapras to finish it off. Execute comes out, I decide to Ice Beam it, almost a one-hit KO, not quite though. Get your seeds up, and that's pretty much it. Next up is Alakazam. I go into Cloyster, but then I realize, hey, Cloyster has terrible special defense, so I don't want that to be my issue. So I just go back into Lapras and body slam this thing over and over as we get hit with a crit. Luckily it didn't matter because Lapras still was able to finish it off. Lapras having my Thunderbolt, so that's unfortunate that it just went down in the face of Blastoise. But I bring out Jinx to throw some Psychics at this thing, and it ends up being what I need. Finally, by hour 15, Chad has made it to the Elite Four. It's time for him to prove how cool he actually is. Now it's time for us to face Lorelei, an Elite Four trainer that's really cool in her own regards because she also uses Ice types. Lapras goes for Thunderbolt, but you can see Dugong takes it pretty well, surprisingly. That's because Dugong is so bulky. But luckily, it just sleeps away its turns, and it ends up going down to Lapras. Next up is Cloyster. Now, normally Cloyster would not like to take these special hits, but Cloyster does have a little bit of bulk, so it is taking those. It's confused Lapras, which is annoying, and then the Spike Cannon is very annoying. But Cloyster cannot 1v1 the Lapras. Next up is Slowbro. This thing has Amnesia, so I am pretty scared of it. I don't want it to go for that, so I just go for some Thunderbolts, but luckily it ends up going for Withdrawal, and we do get a Paralysis, which probably didn't really matter. Next up is Jinx. Now this thing is pretty cool. We go for a Fly, get some good damage, and Jinx ends up going down to 2 flies from Articuno. Now, Articuno finally learns Blizzard after all this time, and it's time for the final showdown. Articuno with Blizzard is amazing. Last up is this Lapras, and we go for a Toxic to poison it, and I'm hoping that ends up helping us out in the long run. I do switch into Lola, so I can try to whittle this thing down. And you can see that the poison is taking its toll, and the Psychic finishes it off. And you would think Bruno would probably be pretty scary. That's because he uses Fighting type, something that's super effective against Ice. However, I'm not that worried. His Onix, of course, that's not even an issue. I don't even know why he uses Onix. It's not that scary of a Pokemon. you cut through it like it's nothing. But, you know, we've got Jinx. This thing just cuts through his fighting type so easily. He can't really get a hit off on us. I end up going for Ice Punch on the Onix, because I know that'll be enough. Onix has terrible special. And last up is Machamp, who I was thinking might take a hit, but we get a crit, knocking it out in one go. Next up is Agatha, and to be fair, I'm kind of nervous about Agatha. Not really her Golbat and Arbok, but I know her Gengar actually have really good special. And most of my Pokemon rely on their special. And the ones that can hit with physical moves, it's like Body Slam, so I'm not doing anything. So we have a few back and forths with my Dugong and her Gengar, and I realize that it's not working out. So I bring out Jinx. I end up waking it up because that's the only way I can win this. And you can see that we're having really bad luck right off the bat. I usually don't use items in these, but I feel like I have to because I'm having such bad luck with that Gengar. Gengar goes down, Golbat comes out. This thing actually takes a Psychic, which actually surprised me. But next up is the Haunter. We've already seen this thing, well, at least Gengar take a lot, so I'm worried about the Haunter as well. Go for a Fly, it's a 2-hit KO. Next up is Arbok. Psychic should do the work, and unfortunately, it doesn't one-shot. So we lose one of our best answers to her Ghost type here. Sailor finishes off for us, and her last Gengar comes out. I'm hoping that we get lucky with some flies. We get confused, and you can see that it's going to take a few flies. I decided to Blizzard this thing, and we freeze it. So we got lucky, very lucky, at that last part. Finally, we reach Lance. Now, usually, Lance is kind of a troublesome trainer to get through. However, we have Ice types. So you're going to see how we cut through his team like it's nothing. Gyarados here hits a Hyper Beam, has to recharge, giving me a free switch into Lapras to finish this thing off with a Thunderbolt. Next up is Dragonair. Dragonair weak to Ice. We get a nice Ice Beam off. It goes for Hyper Beam, but we survive. It's really great. Another Dragonair comes out. I decided to go into Articuno to Ice Beam it to knock it out. Aerodactyl is here. I am nervous about Aerodactyl, and it gets a crit knockout on Articuno. Cloyster comes out. This thing has good bulk, so Hyper Beam shouldn't be doing as much to us. And now it's the Dragonite. Now, even though I lost Articuno, I can just cut through this thing with Cloyster, and it's enough. So Lance, normally more of a challenge, cuts right through his team. And here it is, the final showdown. Who is the coolest trainer of all time? Is it Chad? Is it Jack? Let's find out. I lead off with Cloyster, and we immediately freeze the Pidgeot. However, full restore is used. That's pretty cool, but Cloyster is cooler, and it finishes off the Pidgeot after a back and forth. Next up is Alakazam. To be fair, I'm nervous about this thing because it has high special, high speed, and you can see it crit us twice. I was hoping to get Paralysis, but we don't get that. It actually goes for a Reflect once I bring in Articuno. I try to go for a Fly, but Reflect really dampening that damage. So I start going for Blizzard here, and a takedown to finish off the Alakazam. Next up is Rhydon. Now, Rhydon's not an issue. We just knock that thing out super quick with a Surf. And then Arcanine comes out. I am nervous about Arcanine, but I know I have some water types who should be fine here. And Sailor, being one of those water types, finishes off the Arcanine. Next up is Executor. I go into Articuno, so I can hit it with a Blizzard, and Articuno takes a nap. And that's very unfortunate because it ends up knocking out Articuno. Articuno could have done this. Cloyster finishes off the Executor. Last up is Blastoise. I want to make sure that I've got this thing's number. So I put a Toxic on it. I hit it a few times to put some chip damage. I sent out Sailor. Sailor goes down though. So I go into Lapras and we flinch. So now it's going to be up to some flinches. Luckily though, Lapras does what it needs to do. And Jack immediately takes to crying about his loss. And that's what people learn about. Jack's crying at his loss. And this moment becomes immortalized by the people of Kanto. News of Jack's defeat at the hand of Chad spreads like wildfire. And with that, we have just beat Pokémon Blue as Ice-type gym leaders. Actually, I did this quicker than I did a lot of the other challenges, and I'm wondering if some of that is because some of these Ice types are really good Pokemon, or if some of it is I'm just getting so used to playing this game that I'm just getting through it quicker. I guess we'll find out in the next challenge, which is going to be the Bug-type challenge. It'll probably be a lot tougher than the Ice-type challenge. I'll see you in the next Pokemon video. Also, Articuno hits Blizzard super effective on Moltres.